today's session, we are going to talk about the various types of jobs you can do as a counselor and the various specializations that you can follow. Firstly, coming to the various types of routes which you can follow after completing your education and certification in counseling, there are mainly two paths. One is to either do a job, or secondly, open your own practice. Normally, it has been suggested that if you are a fresh pass out, you should not straight away plunge into your own practice because of the very obvious reasons that you don't have any real experience dealing with clients, and even if you might have been a very brilliant student, the requirements of the business world are quite different, and you need to know a lot of nitty-gritty details about the business and about the workings of the system, you could say. So it is always better to work under either. Then you can work in two types of organizations. Either you could work in a hospital or some counseling institute which offers counseling to people, or you could work under an already established psychologist or a counselor. Here I'd like to point out one thing, that if you are working in a hospital or under a psychiatrist, normally it is the nomenclature is to use the term patients, and if you are working as a counselor under a counselor, then the nomenclature refers to the clients. That is more of a technical detail, but it has been suggested by our expert Dr. Ritu to be specifically mentioned, so I am just mentioning it. Now let's talk about the various types of specializations. There are ENT specialists, there are heart specialists, diabetic specialists, and so on. So even a counselor can be of various types. I mean, a person can deal with specific types of counseling. It is not possible to list then all the types of counseling, that would become too lengthy, but I'll just try to mention a few of the important ones. One is, as you know, career counseling. Career counseling is very simple. I mean, it just deals with advising people on how to choose their career. Simple means it's simple to describe, although it's not as simple, because to guide someone to choose the right career is not an easy task. It depends on various factors, and only a person having all the background knowledge and the vision to foresee the future regarding various trends can only guide another person regarding the right career. And of course, it depends on the person's abilities, his choices, preferences. So it's a culmination of all these factors, and the right career counselor or the person who has all this insight can only act as a career counsel and actually guide the people. Another type of counseling is marriage counseling. Marriage counseling basically refers to dealing with issues in marriage. As you know, there's a lot of stress these days, and there are a lot of breakups, divorces, and even if there is not a divorce, there could be relationship issues. And if it is not appropriate or it is not possible to solve these issues within the family, then you could consider going to a psychologist or a counselor, a marriage therapist they are also called as. Here I like to point out the difference between the Western culture and the Eastern culture. In the East, we usually used to have, still have a lot of joint families, and although I know many of you, the people from the new generation, would simply shirk at the idea of a joint family, but I can tell you there are lots of benefits and lots of psychological advantages which the Western world doesn't have, generally speaking, to a large extent. So that is one of the reasons for a larger number of marriage breakups, divorce. Anyways, without going into any cultural comparisons, I would like to say that marriage counseling is also an important aspect of counseling, where you try to resolve people's issues. Even in government, there are marriage counseling in services available in women's health and all. But I do believe that they are mostly more concerned about the legal aspects and do not serve the sensitive purpose for which they are made. That is just my personal opinion. I don't want to disregard or dishonor anyone, but having said that, that is my personal view. Another is like bereavement counseling. Bereavement counseling dealing with loss. I mean, helping people dealing with their loss. There could be various types of loss, and the greatest loss, as you know, is a loss due to death of a loved one or near and dear one. So it is always a very difficult task to make someone come out of grief, and that is known as grief counseling or bereavement counseling. It is very closely related to another type of counseling, which is the crisis counseling. Crisis counseling is also related to helping people overcome crisis. There is a difference between crisis and bereavement. Crisis could be non-human, so to speak. You could end up in an economic loss or a business loss. You might have heard people even commit suicide. So it's Again, a very important aspect of counselling. One very important type of counselling is known as child counselling. As we know, children are very simple, but at the same time children are very complex, because it's very difficult to understand the children, especially given the fact that they cannot express themselves or their feelings or emotions, and it is difficult to understand, analyze, and then treat the children or suggest ways for improving their behavior or behavioral issues. Normally children do not undergo symptoms like the adults, like depression. Of course, nowadays due to stress of studies they could be so, but mostly the children issues are more related to behavior issues with regards to the parents. So that is one of the important aspects of counseling too. So you can see there are lots of interesting areas in which you can work, and it's a challenging job, but you can enjoy your job and you can also help people, and it will give you a lot of satisfaction, and apart from the money, for which we will talk about later. Thank you.